members, guests, and speakers. Thank you all for attending in person and online. My name is Linda Smith, and I'm honored to be the Program Director for the League of Women Voters of Salt Lake. We are very pleased to have an expert panel present on this topic, Westside equity. But before we get into the meat of our presentation, we would like to have our traditional acknowledgement. We gather here on sacred ground, loved, cared for, protected, and cherished over the ages and to this day by the Ute, Goshute, Paiute, and Shoshone peoples. We commit to follow their lead. For over 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been a nonpartisan, activist, grassroots organization that believes voters should play a critical role in democracy. We encouraged informed and active participation in government, work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. Simply put, our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. Since our last meeting, 15 new individuals have joined the League. We welcome and would like to acknowledge you. If you are present here tonight, please stand so that we can recognize you. If you are online, please put a note in the Q&A. Our new members are Crystal Bowman Carter, Linda Cassidy, Emily Clifford, Belinda Crafts, Lexi Durfee, Jennifer Hall, Joanna Leek, Kate Lingwall, Connie Madden, Brooke McAllister, hey, and we have one present, Karen Melby Tierlink, Clarice Nelson, Marnie Paystrup, Bryn Vance, and Johanna Watzinger Thorpe. Welcome. A recording of tonight's event will be made available to the public on the League of Women Voters of Salt Lake website, lwvsl.org, and on our social media. Other recordings of this event, whether they be in person or on a computer screen, may not be used without the express written approval of the League. The League will only allow audio-video of this event to be broadcast in its entirety, except by the media reporting on this event. There will be some important but short League announcements after our panel discussion. And now, with no further ado, let me introduce our panelists. And we're having a panelist join right as we speak. You're gonna have to tell me how to pronounce the name. Is it Jean or Jean? Jean Mendieta. Jean Mendieta. Okay. We have 5 guests tonight. I'm going to start with my immediate left. Is Jean Mendieta, who is the chef and owner of Proyecto Xilonen.
Yes, Proyecto Xilonen.
Thank you. He was born and raised in Nicaragua and has a degree in sustainable tourism. He is a photographer and a chef with a specialty and a distinct focus on the culinary heritage of Mesoamerica. His journey began when he was still pretty young. Influenced by his family's tradition, he fell in love with the cultural history of the indigenous groups that once ruled the area that is known today as Mesoamerica. After finishing his degree in sustainable tourism from the National Autonomous University of Nicaragua, he moved to the United States with his wife. There, he trained in various restaurants while also studying photography. His culinary journey took him to Mexico, where he studied at the Escuela de Gastronomía Mexicana, delving deeper into the historical richness of Mesoamerican cuisine. Welcome.
Thank you.
Immediately to his left is Kyle Irvin, transportation planner in the Salt Lake City. He has a BS in Geographic Information Systems from the University of Utah, earned in 2017. Served as a GIS coordinator November 2018 to May 2022, and then became a civic engagement project specialist May 2022 to October 2022, all for Salt Lake City. And then finally, since October 2022, has been a transportation planner. Kyle supports transportation project managers by leading civic engagement efforts, enhancing public awareness of transportation initiatives, and gathering community feedback to make data-driven decisions. With over 7 years of experience as a Salt Lake City employee, he worked in the Streets Division, Civic Engagement Team, and now the Transportation Division. Outside of work, he's passionate about spending time outdoors, whether it's riding bikes, snowboarding, camping, or connecting with new friends under the sun. Immediately to his left is Dan Strong, president of the Westside Coalition. Dan was elected president of the Westside Coalition in March of 2022. He has been an advocate for the Westside and his Rose Park neighborhood since moving there in 2012. Dan has served as secretary and chair of the Rose Park Community Council and communications director for the Westside Coalition. In his day job, Dan works as the director of the Utah Sentencing Commission, coming to that job after 10 years as a prosecutor. Dan believes Westside Salt Lake City's neighborhoods are the best in the state. Dan is eager to help build on their potential while preserving what makes them great. And last but not least, who unfortunately did not cater tonight's event. Well, we would have had a larger in-person audience, I'm sure, if we had arranged that, is Lucy Cardenas and Bill Coker, who are the owners of the Red Iguana restaurants. We didn't have Jean cater the event either, which also would have been an opportunity. Lucy grew up in her family's restaurant, the Casa Grande, in downtown Salt Lake, after her parents had moved the family to Salt Lake City in 1965 when she was 6. In 1985, Ramon and Maria Cardenas established the Red Iguana. Due to her early start in this business, Lucy was able to professionally manage and train staff in nationally recognized restaurants throughout the country, including San Francisco, Chicago, New Orleans, Houston, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Pasadena, and Portland. In 2002, Lucy's beloved mother passed away, and in 2004, her gifted brother, Ramon Jr., the legendary chef of Red Iguana, suddenly passed away. Lucy and her husband, Bill Coker, immediately to her left, who doesn't get quite as much billing, returned to Salt Lake City to preserve the family legacy, purchasing the Red Iguana from her father in 2005. Since that time, the business has tripled, expanded to 3 locations, and serves over 500,000 customers a year. The Red Iguana has appeared on diners, drive-ins, and dives with Guy Fieri, which we all know is the height of fame, and was named the Utah SBA Small Business of the Year in 2022. Lucy and Bill were named Utah SBA Small Business Persons of the Year in 2022. In 2023, Lucy was honored by the Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce with the prestigious 2023 Pathfinder Award, presented to community leaders who create new paths promoting the development and recognition of women in business. So I'm impressed by our panel tonight, and I hope you are. Tonight, unlike some nights, we did not require them to bring PowerPoints and make 10 to 12-minute presentations. Instead, we're planning more of a conversation. And I'd like to start with asking each of you, how are you involved professionally or personally in the West Side? And just give one individual experience of a positive sort about your living or working on the West Side. Who'd like to go first? Make sure your button's turned on.
I could ramble through it. Hi, can you all hear me in the back row? So, how involved? We both, Lucy grew up on the West Side. What?
I'll tell them that.
I know that part, but I'm a latecomer. That's the other part of the sentence, and I spent my career in the motion picture industry for 40 years and did a lot of traveling, and we were planning on actually opening a restaurant in Portland, Oregon, but then her family had issues, and she asked me if I would mind coming and and working on my novel in Salt Lake City. I was working on a novel at the time, and I said, I can write anywhere, sure. And I did production managing and producing in the movie, so I'll help you with the legal stuff. And 'cause if you have any questions about the city relationships and things like that, I did it Ferris Bueller's Day Off as a production manager and coordinated all the parade activity with the film commission and the city and everybody else. So I can look at that for you. Well, the novel never got out of the box. And that was in 2005, and it's still in the box. And I've been a part of that expansion of the restaurants and the protection and developing the longevity of the family heritage and legacy, because her parents were quite unique and interesting people, and both very talented chefs and very affable and engaging people. And there was a lot of that spirit in the restaurant and in the staff and in the community. I grew up in Oxnard, California, which was a very much, in a lot of ways, very like Salt Lake City. It had a very diverse 3 military bases and a very diverse community. And I was in the boys club there and played baseball in La Colonia, which is where the bracero workers' children went to school, where they lived in barracks when they worked in World War II there. So I had a whole experience in that sort of thing. And so coming into the West Side, I felt very much at home. I felt very relaxed and very easygoing, and I met a lot of wonderful people. And it was so wonderful to walk into a restaurant where people were coming generationally, and so to get an experience of the community on that kind of level led to immediate sort of efforts to support the high school volleyball girls team, to support KRCL, to support a lot of the children's music classes. Lucy went to the elementary school and on career day and explained what it was like to be a restaurateur and a cook and a chef. And we served flautas to all the kids, and they were very excited, and nobody had ever talked about that to them. They talk about being a police officer, a fireman, I got the mayor, a businessman, but they didn't talk about doing, being a chef or owning a restaurant. So there was a lot of interest there. And so we really feel blessed, and we feel like we're a bit of an iconic, legendary, very small family-run business. And so in a part of the city that has not flourished recently, and so we both work with other organizations and interested parties in developing as much healthy and vigorous community activity as we can. And that's a very satisfying, but also very challenging aspect when you're running 3 restaurants with 200 employees. And every day, I say that Lucy is actually the mayor of a small town, because really that's the best description of who she is. And there's always something going on in a small town. There's somebody's hair is on fire, somebody's drunk and then thrown in jail, somebody runs their car into somebody's kid bike. And there's this stuff going on all the time. So we oftentimes are sitting down at home after a 12, 14-hour day, and we get the phone call that, hey, there's a policeman came to the front door at Red Iguana 1 and said, everybody has to leave right now. And I said, what do you mean we leave right now? He said, yeah, they want us to leave right now. Get up and walk out. And I go, what? And we had to run across the parking lot, and turns out there was a bank robber in the motel next door. So things happen. And the West Side is notorious for things happening. But what really drives the bus in the West Side is the community fabric that is so strong, and people are proud of West Side. It's a place. You don't have to say anything else. You say it's the West Side. You know, you don't say, I grew up in Oxnard, which was on the other side of the tracks, and it was called the South Side. So that's all that needs to be said. Oh yeah, I'm from the West Side. Everybody gets it. So that's a significant aspect of our lives. And when we went to do the expansion, because we were so busy being on television with Mr. Guy Fieri, that Lucy said, we're not going to leave. We're not going to put our second restaurant in Draper. We're not going to put our second restaurant in Ogden. We're going to keep it on the West Side. And we did. And people were saying, we had New York Times articles written about what a bad idea that is. And the small business editor of the paper said, we met in an award ceremony in Boston that we got for fastest growing business in inner cities sort of thing. And he sat next to me at lunch and he said, so tell me the story of Red Iguana. And I told him, well, we're opening this second location 2 blocks away. And he says, the same concept? Yeah, same concept. And he says, that sounds really challenging. I'd like to write an article about that and then ask everybody, is that a good idea or not? And so he asked chefs all over the country that had multiple locations in inner cities, what would you do? The Trax line was coming. It was going to be a 2.5-year construction site, shut down a lot of businesses, cause a lot of detours and problems for the businesses on the North Temple corridor. But at the same time, you were just on diners, drive-ins, and dives, and you have an hour wait every day to get a table of the week. So what would you do? And most of them have said, well, we wouldn't do that because they didn't believe that we had that the roots that this family and this business have throughout the valley. And but we bet on it, and we won. That the second restaurant is, then we double the size of it again after that. So, and it's still, people love being on the railroad. Most people, some people like, what the hell are we doing? I can't even talk to you across the table because there's trains going by as well. Okay, well, it's an urban situation. You know, some people love urban situations, some people don't. But that integration is what fuels our intentions and our efforts, and we that's why we're involved in this whole concept of what's going to happen now on the West Side.
Thanks very much. Let's talk to Mr. Mendieta, who's also in the food business, but a new entrant to the food business. Tell us a little bit about your involvement in the West Side and one thing that you love about it.
Yes. So when I went to Mexico, I didn't went to the culinary school. I studied history of food, which is a different take on food. And that changed my perspective on food. So when I came back, I didn't want to open a restaurant. That was not the goal. I wanted to have more like intimacy dinners and have the farm to table concept and talk to people about the plants, about the history of the plants, about the importance, the cultural, the religion of them. And it was very challenging. But one thing that I loved, it was the community. You know, the first dinner ever that I had, it was with friends. One of them was a filmmaker, and she told her friends, and then her friends told her friends, and it was just this, the word spread so nice. And all of a sudden I had people that were doing the same thing. They're doing private dinners. I had chefs, other farmers that came to the dinners too, where I create this contact, and we created this community of like chefs and farmers, and also like small business that were doing sort of the same thing, but a little bit different. And that's what I love about it. That's what I didn't want to have a restaurant and just bring people and eat what I put on the menu. It was more like just connecting with food. Because when I do the dinners, I present you a herb or an ingredient, and I'll tell you, okay, so what connection has the cinnamon with you, or epazote, or corn. I love talking about corn because that's one of the main ingredients that I use a lot, and that's where the conversation starts. And that's where, and that's lovely about it. That's one of the things that I love about in the community. Just like people, oh, I know who grows this. I have this phone number. Call this person. Just reach out to them and just create this also a network with people that are doing great things too.
Great. Let me turn to Dan, who doesn't have a business on the West Side. I think the Sentencing Commission really doesn't locate itself on the West Side and isn't really his business, but lives there and is a booster of residents on the West Side. Why don't you talk a little bit about your involvement?
Sure. I ended up in the West Side because my wife, who's a school teacher, bought a house there because that's where she could afford a house back in 2009 before I knew her. And then we met and started dating, and I ended up moving there. I grew up in Bountiful, and I remember, you know, the reputation of what everybody thought the whole West Side was called Rose Park in Bountiful, first of all, and which it's not, but oh, Rose Park, that's where you know, the crime is, I think, was kind of the reputation that I knew growing up. So when you know, I met Cammie and she had a house there, I was like, oh, interesting. And I went there. First time I went, I just had like, I don't know, I felt at home there, honestly, the first time. And it may have had something to do with the fact that I really liked her, but but it's a nice street and a nice neighborhood. And not only that, but I think, like, if as you heard, I sort of, you know, after I moved in a year or two later, started to get a sense for the neighborhood and the community. I liked it a lot better than anywhere else I'd ever been in Utah. In fact, growing up in Bountiful, I was one of those kids who was like, I need to get out of here. And I did. I moved to the Bay Area for a long time, and I really enjoyed, you know, some of the, I guess, more diverse cultural experiences I had out of state. And when I came back, that's exactly what I was looking for, and that is what I found on the West Side, a really thriving community of all kinds of people, a melting pot. And I don't think, you know, without disparaging the rest of the state, which I do love in many ways, that's rare in Utah, and we have it on the West Side, and it's intangible, and you can't create it. It has to, you know, happen naturally, and it has. So it's a real asset. And when I come to, you know, when I see things happening on the West Side or work on projects that may bring some change to the neighborhood, that's something we can't lose, because again, it's irreplaceable. And I think you've heard everybody here talk about how much we love that aspect of it. And that's one thing I'd emphasize to people who don't live there. Our problems, and we do have problems on the West Side, they do not come from each other, from our community. We have an endless amount of love for our community and our neighbors. And when I go to like events at my kid's school or things like this and see people who live there, I mean, there's a lot of love, and it's a really warm feeling. The problems we have are from outside and from, you know, a long history of other outside factors acting upon us. And
We're going to
so
move to
there
the
we go.
problem.
I know I'm trying to segue you. So, but anyway, so as far as one experience, it would be that I go outside my street at night. There's families out there. There's an ice cream truck coming by. There's kids playing, and again, from all walks of life. And it's just, you know, I think it's something that is really special and hard to find.
And last but not least, Kyle, his work takes him to the West Side. Why don't you share a little bit about what you've seen and experienced?
Yeah, can you hear me in the back okay? I also had one of those I need to get out of here experiences, but I come from 45 minutes north in Clearfield, Utah, and moved to Salt Lake City for school. I've never had the pleasure of living on the West Side, but my work takes me out there often. I worked out on the West Side for 5 years, just west of Redwood Road on 5th South, and spent a lot of time riding my bike and driving out to West Side neighborhoods. And currently I spend a ton of time talking to community members through work, getting feedback on our projects, going to community council meetings. I also have lots of friends who live on the West Side. I love hanging out with them. I love going to events at Jordan Park, like the 4th of July. Lots of great businesses and restaurants like Culture Coffee and Mestizo. I love the culture of it. I love biking on the Jordan River Trail. There's a lot of great things about the West Side.
Thank you. Yes, Lucy.
I haven't
Yes, you,
given my 2 cents, may I?
yes, please do.
Well, I know I love this because my family moved us to Salt Lake City in 1965. I grew up in Rose Park. I also went to Rose Park Elementary, Newman, Northwest Junior High, and West High School. I'm very familiar and a lot with Rose Park. That area, downtown Salt Lake, was my playground growing up. And in 1965, Salt Lake was a very different place, right? So it was very challenging for us. And what was so great about it is my parents were pioneers, and when they came to Salt Lake, they established their business. And I am very proud of what they have accomplished. And I moved away, and the changes I've seen on the west side are very, very interesting to me. That's a nice way of putting it. But I do want to say that we also live right off of North Temple. So we are very much involved in our community, in our neighborhood. I walk by my high school. So a lot of memories, a lot of, it's amazing to see all the changes in the area. So that's my connection to
Great.
that area.
We titled this West Side Equity because there are a number of ways in which people have said the West Side is not treated fairly or has not been treated fairly, has been disadvantaged in various ways. So I want to invite the panel to explore that a little bit, some of the problems, some of the challenges, before we then explore some of the solutions. Dan, you are segueing to
Just chomping
problem,
at the bit
so
on that one.
I'll let you start.
Well, and a lot of people here have probably a deeper history than I do on this, but I'm at least, I think, somewhat educated on the history of redlining. I mean, it starts with the fact that it's called the West Side, west of what? Well, west of railroad tracks and the freeway, which, originally divided the city, starting with the railroads. And then a long history after that of, I could spend hours on it, but historical practices in the banking and real estate industry that designated the West Side as, a risky place to invest or to build a home, which, essentially stigmatized the area and led to a whole bunch of just historical inequities. As part of that, you have the industry, the infrastructure that supports Salt Lake City and even the state, increasingly located there, right? So we have the airport and we have the railroads and the freeways. We have power plants. We now have an inland port and the prison, and all of that on the West Side. And some of those things have been there for 70 years. Some of them have been there for 5. Some of them are still being built today. But it's all industry that goes to support everywhere, but the burden of it is here on the West Side. And so there's all kinds of disparities that come along with that, with all of those things. I think almost any dimension you probably looked at, whether it be health, public health, or air quality, and we have looked at these things. Number of daycare centers, number of schools, all of those things are reduced on the West Side. We don't have the resources that we should have by virtue of our population, and also we bear more of the burdens of the impacts of industry that supports the state. So those are a lot of the problems we have.
Okay, that's a pretty good list of challenges. And I think Dan's done a good job illustrating how the problems aren't created by the people that live there. They're created by the rest of us, by locating, polluting transportation, the expansion of I-15, which will provide more pollution and fewer homes, et cetera. What other problems do the rest of you think Dan left out? Jump right in.
Okay. I've thought a lot about this. I am a child of Rose Park, West Side. My parents had a restaurant in downtown Salt Lake City, 2 locations, so very much a downtown girl. Growing up in that area, I never felt that I lacked for anything. It was lovely. Rose Park had businesses that were thriving. North Temple had businesses that were thriving. Lots of things to do. We'd go to downtown Salt Lake. It was my backyard, as I said. So I find it, I wonder what happened. And as I said, our Rose Park was a very lovely neighborhood, very well manicured, very well taken care of. And it's changed. And I think that I'm speaking to the problems that Dan has brought up. And I've always believed in the neighborhood, and it has so much potential. So that's just my take. I historically speaking, I'm trying to connect the two, then and now, because I'm living it.
Thank you.
I feel like Dan touched on most of the transportation aspects of it. The Transcontinental Railroad, famous for connecting in Utah, the Golden Spike in 1870, is now one of the largest transportation issues that Salt Lake City faces. The I-15 freeway, which was built in 1957, added to that issue. And now we have a 6-mile stretch of Salt Lake City that is divided in half. And the only ways to get across the railroad tracks and I-15 is through bridges and surface streets, which are frequently blocked by trains. He mentioned this already, but the Westside experiences worse air quality due to the airport and also lots of automobile traffic in the winter. Yeah, I feel like you covered most of it.
Some people say there aren't enough bus shelters for the buses and schools. Maybe need a school on the west side, not just barely on the west side. Are there other concerns that anybody?
Yeah, that's a big one. There's no high school in Glendale. And so, I mean, there's a ton of West Side students that go to East High and Highland High, which is absolutely crazy to me. We have some solutions, but I'll hold on until we.
One historical aspect I think that we faced during the tracks line construction down North Temple, when it came up, we were a frontline business, and this is kind of an issue, and also I want to frame it as part of a solution as well, because as we talk about what's happening currently and moving forward, it's an example of some of the things that were done well in the kind of a development that is very impactful, very expensive, 3.5-year long project, and disruptive. But at the same time, the thing that was so difficult was that it was a state highway. North Temple was not a street in the city. It was not a city street. It was a state highway. So instantly, the access, the right-of-ways, the design work, the requirements, everything sort of that had to be dealt with administratively, legally, and in every other way, were multi-leveled, so you had to, there was all these state filters and all these other things that had to be dealt with in order to actually make it happen. And it caused a lot of delays, a lot of confusion, and it was very difficult to live through. We lost our lunch business for 2.5 years, and it never came back. We used to have what we call the suits that would come across the bridge, the viaduct as it was called, and bring their clients from downtown that came in from out of state, or they wanted to, they were regional salespeople, and they would invite their local clients to the Red Iguana because they knew it would be casual. They could do their hustle. They could have a good time. It's relaxing, and everybody enjoyed the food. So that was a major part of our income. And the thing about those kinds of impacts, which we have to think about for the whole concept of what's going to happen with the power district and all of that, is that once those changes are made, people are creatures of habit. And if they can't get across the detours to get to our restaurant for that 2.5 years were about 16 blocks, and there was no way to get to the restaurant without going across a commercial industrial train track or a whole bunch of them. So people would try bring their clients on a short, the business clients in downtown that have an hour and 15 minutes for lunch, and they spend 20 minutes coming and going waiting at a train. So that becomes a bad idea and stops happening altogether. So that physical impact and the financial impact is a big part of why there are organizations like the Westside Coalition, why there are organizations like the River District Business Alliance, because we have to coalesce and try to protect the status of what works and what doesn't. But the good news about that project was there were people guiding some of aspects of it that were very intuitive and had done a lot of work in other aspects of that kind of coordination with transportation, that said we need the frontline businesses to buy into this, and we need to coordinate the impacts on them the best way possible. So we met every month. Every frontline business, every frontline institution, the Rocky Mountain Power was represented, the state resources and state facilities on toward the west end of the run were represented, the schools were represented, everybody was, the community leadership was represented, and we would meet with the contractors and the developers and the UTA every month at Diamond Lills. And a lot of things got solved, a lot of things put on the table, like we're trying to do right now. And they got worked out. The detours that were made, but there were detour signs. People were told how to get to places, and the impacts could be mitigated of when they're going to shut the water off. How long is it going to be off? Well, you know, right now, Red Iguana 2 and Red Iguana 1 have over 8 developments that are shovel ready to start construction. And they've been vacant lots now for over 2 years. There's 3 of them out of the 4 corners of 9th West and North Temple. They just broke ground on what used to be a laundromat that we all use, and we used to take our tablecloths in there to be cleaned because it was a local business. And during that tracks line, we created a neighborhood shop local, shop North Temple campaign, and every city council member and the mayor and several other people wore those buttons to City Hall. And people were coming to North Temple to buy things from the businesses to help them survive. A lot of them didn't survive. And a lot of them may not survive the stadium, the power district situation for the same reasons. A lot of them didn't survive the 2008 crisis, and they didn't survive the COVID crisis. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that come up. And so the fact that the need for coordination and collusion and cooperation on all the levels from all the people involved is the critical aspect of the situation, regardless of whether it's on the plus side or the negative side.
Lucy, I saw you taking notes. Were you going to add something to this list of problems, or are you going to solutions?
Well, I think a lot about getting around. I remember growing up and my parents would get frustrated with the trains. That was for sure. Oh, here comes the train. Here comes the train. But I know how to get around my neighborhood. And I think it's just a matter of getting to know our neighborhood and coming to our neighborhood, because I think it's an imaginary border, and you can go back and forth quite easily, I believe, when you want to.
I agree. Just maybe 2 things to add to the long list, but I think Lucy, you hinted at, like, there used to be a really kind of walkable entertainment, dining, shopping stuff on the West Side, and there's really not anymore. And you know, I think kind of some of the racist based practices I talked about before help contribute to that, and also we've had economic downturns and other things that have maybe influenced it. But for whatever reason, you know, I went on a historic home tour of Rose Park a couple weeks ago that was put on by the Preservation Utah group. It was really cool, and I went on a house that was built in 1942, and one of the original owner's daughters or something was there, and she talked about there used to be an A&W restaurant on the corner, which is now like a smoke shop. And you know, I mean, it's just things like that have sort of changed. And so you know, we talked about the power district. There's a need for places for people to go work, play, shop, and eat on the West Side, besides Red Iguana, as much as we love Red Iguana, and we could use a few more, but there can be more businesses like that. And then I'll also just mention, I used to be somebody who would say the rumors about public safety issues on the West Side are false or exaggerated, and I still think that, but we do have a real problem with public safety in the North Temple and Jordan River Trail area right now. It's been pretty bad, especially over the last year after the Rio Grande, Operation Rio Grande happened, and it's gotten a little bit better recently, and we're really working to make sure that it stays better. And it's, again, still not as bad as people say, but I do think it's a legitimate problem and something we've been focused on a lot more lately.
Do you want to add something?
Yes. So this is one of the things a challenge that I face, which is started my business. It was also access to affordable housing as a first-time home buyer. That was a huge challenge for me and my wife. And also that one thing, because I wanted to do the farm to table concept, finding a house with a green area that could be affordable. That was really hard. We couldn't find a place. We found a place. It was 30 by 40. I'm going to make it happen. That's what I told my wife, we're going to make it happen. This is our house. We're going to make it our home, and it's going to be lovely. But also the other challenge is I need another plot to grow my, I couldn't find community gardens. It was so I met other chefs that are doing here, everything in downtown. So I had connections here in the community gardens here in downtown area, but not on the west side. And that was a huge challenge for me. And we need those green areas specifically because we have the air pollution. If we have more industries here, there's going to be more air pollution. And then eventually we're going to have acid rains. They're going to lower the pH level of the soil. It's going to make it really hard to grow organically. We're going to have to tend to use just more chemicals to grow things. And that's going to add more to our health, you know? That's going to be a problem that I see, especially as a, farmer or just.
Okay, and I think Dan mentioned, but it just sort of slipped into his list, the absence of certain community resources like grocery stores.
Yes.
A grocery store desert, like childcare centers. Not that the neighborhood house isn't there, but there just aren't very many childcare centers available on the west side. There's a list of very essential community resources that aren't there.
Public health clinics, hospitals, yeah, you name it. We have less of
Yeah. What happened is slowly but surely, it was close by. Pier 1 left, my dry cleaners left, my Rite Aid left, and my laundromat left. And then Lee's closed. I was so excited when Lee's opened just up on 400 West, but then they reopened. It's different, but we really do need supermarkets. We need so much. A place to buy flowers, dry cleaning, laundry. We talk about this all the time. What would you like to see? I'd like to see businesses that sell things.
We'd like to see more restaurants.
More
We feel like we're
restaurants.
on an island.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's,
So
we were gonna have two beer breweries on one across the street on 9th West from the Red Tree Room, and the other one across the train tracks on 8th West on the south side of the train tracks. There was going to be a family-oriented beer brewery of substantial size, and those the properties were purchased, and the plans were going through the city, and both of those bailed. And one of them ended up on 2100 South, Grid City Brewery. This is as Lucy was saying, she didn't even give you the whole list of what businesses were right there on North Temple. We had a movie house. There was a movie house here. There was a bowling alley. Her mother had a concession stand across the street from the Red Iguana in the bowling alley. There was a liquor store there. The liquor department called it Fort Apache because there was a lot of people that were drinking and falling asleep in the bushes on the outside, but it had a liquor store. I mean, so we didn't have to go downtown. I mean, that all started evaporating, and it has not regenerated. And we built Red Iguana 2 with the assumption that we would draw more people into the neighborhood. People would see it as a populated and dynamic place to open other restaurants, so we could have a restaurant district. And the thing about our experiences, and I've in the filming business, I've done filming in 48 cities. You know, I like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but we went to Boston and walked halfway across Boston just to experience it on the way to the baseball stadium. And there were 20, 30, 40 restaurants, bars in walking distance of the stadium, and everybody walks to the game. They walk to the game, they eat on the way, they have drinks on the way, they watch the game, and they eat and drink on the way out. And that creates community. It gives a place to gather. It has a fabric of a culture. They can cheer for when we came, Lucy took a San Francisco ferry ride from San Francisco to Larkspur, which is on the Upper Peninsula above the bay. And I'm waiting for the dock for her to come off the ferry. And all of a sudden, 75 to 90 people come off the ferry, all wearing San Francisco 49ers swag. And I'm going, oh. And that's not even, so they're, and so that's transportation. That's facilitation. That's the ability for people to move around and enjoy that kind of thing. And if we're going to have a stadium in the middle of North Temple, in the middle of the West Side, by God, there better be a way for people to get there and then something they can do around the arena. If the arena is in the middle of nowhere and and you have to get in a car and drive for an hour and a half to get there, how many people are going to do that? Or can afford to do that and take the time to do that? And what do they do with their kids, while they're doing that? I mean, it really is. This is a community on the cusp of a whole nother world, a whole nother generational change. So I hope everybody begins to start paying attention now, because these things are solidifying. We were just at the city council yesterday where they were charged with passing the exception to the local ordinances so that the stadium and that whole 100-acre development could be, because of the state's involvement, would not have to be regulated by the normal city ordinances regarding how the property gets used. Because right now the property use is Rocky Mountain Power storing all their 20-foot tall cable reels in a big giant parking lot with asphalt all over it that does nothing. It just sits there. But so for us to acquire and have that kind of a asset, there's a huge amount of community required and an attention to what the impacts of the community are going to be to make it successful.
Go ahead.
Yes, when you mentioned groceries, that one thing that was heartbreaking for me was knowing about the swap meet. How many of you have gone to the swap meet? Yes, and it's during the summer. It's like on Saturday or Sunday. It's just the amount of people that go over there, and you see all these fresh ingredients that you get from Mexico or like the North is California, just like getting fresh vegetables, getting fresh ingredients. That's one of the first places that I used to go when I was not growing certain ingredients. I would go there and I have my farmers and certain like people that would bring me ingredients, and they were like excited to show me, I brought this. And now knowing that it's not going to be there anymore, that was heartbreaking, and like trying to figure out what am I going to do now, or asking them where it's going to be now. That was one thing. It was very challenging. And
so I think we've done an excellent job of painting a picture of how good it was once and how many things aren't good now. And we've just begun to tiptoe to what can be done. I mean, obviously, magic wands are not an option. Advocacy to governmental organizations might be an option. What can be done to take some steps in the right direction? I'm going to start with Kyle because he's the one government person here, and he may have some ideas, and maybe transportation people are trying to move some things in the right direction.
Yeah, so this panel has been talking about investing in economic development on the West Side, and we absolutely support that. I would love to see more businesses, more grocery stores, more health centers, more schools, things like that. And the transportation division is investing in a ton of projects on the West Side that not only help people get around within their West Side communities, but also bridging that East-West divide that I was telling you about. I'll have to respectfully disagree with you. I don't think the East-West divide is imaginary. I was personally impacted by it. I bike commuted out to the streets division for many years and on 8th and 9th South, and got stuck by the train many times. And it's not so big of an issue if you're in a car and you can just drive 4 blocks, but if you're walking or biking, it's a big issue. And also we mentioned there's no liquor store and you have to go downtown. Downtown is the economic powerhouse of the state, and there's a lot of jobs, a lot of economic opportunity there. And I think people on the West Side deserve to have access to the East Side as well as East Siders going over to the West Side to enjoy all the wonderful things the West Side offers. Some of the projects we're working on in terms of transit, we were talking about improved bus stops. We're currently improving bus stops on Redwood Road. Salt Lake City also invests millions of dollars every year to increase service of 3 bus routes on the West Side. That's the 217, the 9, and the 1. We also have the Trax Green Line that runs, I should mention the Green Line and all of those buses run at 15-minute service intervals, which is pretty much the best we have in the state. There's a couple routes on Second South that are down to like 7 or 10 minutes, but 15 minutes is really good. We also have the Livable Streets program, which is a citywide traffic calming program that has prioritized much of the west side of Salt Lake City, as there's been a historical underinvestment in transportation infrastructure on the west side. These projects are going to be making local neighborhood streets and west side communities safer. We are currently reconstructing 3rd North. We just put a big pedestrian and bicycle bridge that spans over the railroad tracks for West High students to get over the railroad when there's a train blocking. We also just got a several $1 million, I think it was a $2 to $3 million federal grant called Reconnecting Communities. And in the coming months, likely in February sometime, we're going to be launching the Critical Connections Study, which is going to be a 2-year-long community-led conversation to come up with solutions to bridge the East-West divide. We're going to start by putting together a committee that's going to be all paid positions, and we're trying to find West Siders who have access to networks of cultural networks and linguistic networks that the city doesn't typically have access to, because there is a distrust of government on the west side for good reason, with all of the historical underinvestment and putting in the freeway and this kind of stuff. So we're excited to see the outcome of that in a couple of years, and that will make recommendations for infrastructure projects that help bridge the east-west divide. We also have the school district transit pass program. Every student in Salt Lake City gets access to a UTA pass free of charge, which is super helpful for all of the West Side kids that may go to school on the East Side, and just getting around in general. Another transit program that we work with UTA on is called the UTA On Demand. This is available in all of West Side Salt Lake, and then also in Guadalupe. It's $2.50, and it's a rideshare program. It's not right from your house like Uber, but it's corner to corner. So if you walk down your street, someone will pick you up and drop you off anywhere within the service zone. And it's primarily used to connect you to other transit options like Front Runner or Trax, things like that. What else? We have a ton of projects. We're working on tons of intersection safety projects. We've got one on 10th West and 5th North right now. We're constantly upgrading crosswalks all over the city. We've got neighborhood byways, which are a network of local streets that have fairly low vehicle traffic volumes that already feel fairly safe to walk and bike along, where we do additional traffic calming along those corridors and improve the crosswalks to just make the neighborhood more walker and biker friendly. I'm probably forgetting things, but we're working on a lot.
And
New bus stops.
those things that are happening through Salt Lake City, has that been because somebody in transportation is sensitive, somebody on the city council is sensitive, an administrator is sensitive? When things have gone right, how come?
That's a good question. I think we just want to see safer streets generally. We just signed on to Vision Zero just a couple of years ago. It is a global framework that originated somewhere in the Nordic countries. I think it was Finland or something like that. Sounds like you might. Oh, okay. It's a way of thinking about street design. Basically, we recognize that humans are going to make mistakes, and when you make mistakes behind the wheel of a car, it doesn't result in a severe injury or a fatality. And so this is how we approach all of our projects now, whether it's a complete street reconstruction, a little intersection project, or upgrading crosswalks here or there. So to answer your question, I think we're very interested in, and our director and several of our other leadership think that the East-West divide is one of the largest transportation issues that Salt Lake City faces. But in general, we are just trying to make it easier and safer to get around your neighborhood.
Great. Others of you may have suggestions about what should be done and how to get it done.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. I think my answer is simple, but it's not without controversy, I think. And so I'll say it anyway. I think the main thing that we need on the West Side is more people, especially more families, to move there. And that means more housing. I think that the rest of the problems we talked about, like better transportation, more power in government, more businesses, will follow if we have the right type of housing and development, bringing people to live, work, and play on the West Side. I think the future of the West Side is either going to be more industry, and we're already seeing that with, the institutions that were put here 70 years ago, 50 years ago, like the airport and the freeway and the railroad and the refinery and the power plants, all now need to expand because Utah's growing, and they're going to expand and expand and expand, and to the point where either the West Side's going to be a place that mainly houses industry with very few people living and working and playing there, or it's going to become part of Salt Lake City as it properly should be, where, a place where people live. And yes, we'll still have some industry there, but I see those as the two possible futures. And so I'm very invested in trying to make sure that we benefit from the growth of the state and participate in the growth of the state. But that as we do that, it's really critical that we preserve the good things we already have and build on those rather than kind of pull them over. And that is a tricky problem. And we're already seeing, Bill mentioned with the power district and the potential major league project. And we've all been involved in discussions on that. And all these other things that are happening, it's going to be a constant kind of discussion about the cost benefit of all those things. And they'll have costs and they'll have benefits. And so trying to navigate those waters is difficult, but I really do come down on the side of big picture, bringing more things to the West Side that are going to bring people instead of industry.
And I want to second that. And I say this, and I don't take this lightly, and it's a responsibility to our customers, but we serve, and I've said this many times, we serve between 600 to 1,200 people a day in our restaurants. That's how many people are coming to that neck of the woods, to our neighborhood. If there are things to come and see and do, they will come. As far as growing up, I went to the University of Utah. I took transportation. I got there without an issue. Something changed, as I said, and I think culturally, Rose Park, and this is controversial, culturally, Rose Park has changed quite a bit. I see it. I think that there is a stigma to it. They think that crime is high in the area. I think making it more walkable is very important. And they talk about pollution. They should not expand the I-15. There's no reason for it. And we need to stop that. I don't know if it's too late.
It's too late. I'm just kidding, Lucy. Well, we did secure through the actions of all of us here and others, we've secured a commitment from UDOT that there are no homes that will be mandatorily taken as part of the I-15 expansion, which was a major win. And I'm not saying we're resting on that, but that's where that is right now.
Thank you.
But whether the whole project will stop, it happens to cost over twice as much as they thought. And so they had funded the original amount, but they have not funded the $3+ billion that it will now cost. And so that may help us. And of course, we're all opposed and fighting it, but I don't know. I'd probably bet on it happening personally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Housing is a challenge, not just in the West Side, but throughout Utah and the greater Salt Lake area. In Salt Lake today, the majority of residents are renters, not owners. And some would argue it's better for a community to have ownership because people then are more invested in the community. The legislature's provided some funding to assist people getting first homes. Are there plans to whether rental housing or affordable rental housing or support for family-owned housing to put in place in the West Side?
I can speak to that, I guess. I mean, there are the problem is, and I don't say this, like I said, these are always cost benefit questions and they're complicated questions. And I totally respect people who may feel differently than I do. And these discussions are all important. But there are always policies that will bring people, and I mean, an example, the state or the city wanted to change its accessory dwelling unit or ADU policy to make it more permissive so that you can add a mother-in-law unit on your house without having an additional parking space perhaps, or even if it is higher than the property you're building on top of your garage or something. So they wanted to loosen some of those rules. Those things would bring more people to the west side and increase density. They would also help West Side residents benefit from the growth of the state by being able to kind of profit off their own, property. And they would bring renters, but also benefit homeowners. So I think a net good, not that there aren't issues here and some people complain about parking, or there's also a risk that developers will seize this and kind of use it to push people out of their homes, and that'll cause displacement. So these things are all out there, but that's one example. There are others like the new project for the Major League Baseball part has a major housing component to it. Those things, and then we might talk about affordable housing or deeply affordable housing. There's the tiny house village with the so what's their name? The Other Side Academy is going to run on the west side. So there's all these things that are housing projects like you're talking about. But anytime you have change in a community, like I said, there's a cost benefit, and there will be people who kind of come out and say, we like things the way they are and we don't want them to change. And those discussions can become really tricky and embattled. And it's frankly, it's hard to build things or change things in our community. And so I think we do have opportunities there. There are also some risks. And frankly, there's always a lot of blowback.
We've been talking for an hour, and our audience would like perhaps to weigh in with some questions. Not that I want to prevent anyone from saying the next brilliant thing that you want to share, but I do want to invite people with questions to step forward now or put online. Just come forward to one of these mics and push the green button, it'll turn on.
This mic. Okay. There are a lot of kids on the west side. In fact, I think there are more there than there are on the east side. But I am a West High mom. I don't understand why we can't have a high school on the west side. However, I have heard from some people that, hey, why would you want one there? Because we want us to have a better exchange between west and east side. Busing is controversial, either here or in California or anywhere. So what do you feel about what's happening with the children on the west side? What should happen with the children? Should we care about where a high school is? Those are my questions.
Wow.
You want to take?
You go.
You went to high
Well,
school. Go ahead.
I went to West High School, and West High School is still there. Excellent school, beautiful school. Like I said, I walk by it all the time. They closed South High. I'm not sure as far as where else on the west side, because the west side is considered, it's like northwest, right? That's where my neighborhood is. And then we go into downtown. I don't know if there should be a high school over by Poplar Grove, that sort of in that area. Schools, they're closing schools. I don't understand the politics behind all that, quite honestly.
There has been a drain. I mean, we were part of the school closure. My kids go to Newman, and that was one of the 7 schools slated for study for closure. And I will tell you, Newman is just a magical, special place that I have like an incredible amount of love for. And so that was a really hard time for us as a family. And I know luckily Newman didn't close, but people in the schools that did, I can only imagine the trauma of that. So, but you see their data, and this is true citywide. It's also true on the west side that we have fewer kids than we used to, because it's expensive to live. It's even expensive to live on the west side, believe it or not. It didn't used to be, but it is now. So families can't afford to live there, and so there's fewer kids, and so there's eventually going to be fewer schools. That's partly why school closure discussions are happening. The West Side High School discussion, the status of that now that the bond has passed is I think it's probably dead. I think as a state high school, I think that, or a county high school, I think that money is going to go to remodel Highland and West. That's what people voted on. And so there will not be a new pot of money to build a public high school on the west side. With that said, there's still a lot of people and groups, us included, who believe there needs to be a high school on the west side. And so I think you'll see, we're hearing action to put some kind of charter, whether it's a public charter or a private charter, so that kids will have a place to go, that that is closer and more reflective of the community. And yeah, I think we'll all support that. But I think whether there'll be a third or fourth, Salt Lake High School on the west side, I think that issue is probably resolved by the bond, unfortunately.
I worked on the Salt Lake City 5-year affordable housing plan when I was on the civic engagement team for Salt Lake City. And as part of that, we were asking people what community resources they wanted to see and where. And one of the most common responses, what they want is they wanted a high school in Glendale.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not against, by the way, the idea that we need to, have more integration between East and West at our high schools. But why does that have to happen on the east side? They could bust them here, right? Like, I don't see that as a really good argument for not having a West Side high school. The argument you'll hear, or the decision that the school board reached, was that there wasn't a plot of land large enough on the west side that they could develop. I don't know if that's true, but that's what they explained to us.
Do we have other questions here in the room?
I can ask another one.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm all about questions. What are we going to do about some of the railroads? I mean, I've been stuck many times. I remember way back in Jackie Biscoopsy's time, she talked about getting, let's get somebody to come over, maybe overpasses. What do we do about the railroads?
Or putting them underground, which is the big, expensive, ideal project,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
That's what's on the table. That's a specific project that's been around 3 years, 4 or 5 years. But it's utilizing the area that some of the tracks are in right now by the train station, by the Santa Fe train, the old Santa Fe train station. That could, it's like the Big Dig in Boston, which took the whole freeway underground. It's the kind of thing that is a large scale project, but is conceivable. They have some hydraulic conditions that might be tricky because the water is underground is fairly close to the surface to create so that there's no swamping of the trains as they go underground. But it would free up 70 acres of prime territory downtown for development of a whole new section of town that could be investment productive and could be designed to be people friendly. That we need kind of a larger footprint of people's space rather than all, having our buildings be filling the entire blocks of the blocks are big enough in Salt Lake City. My God, I'm just going to walk around the block. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Find a place to sleep because it'll take a minute. Some of those apartment buildings are wall to wall and they're 300 or 400 or 500 feet long. That's getting some people in there. I totally understand that. But there needs to be something that is also more people oriented. And a lot of big cities are understanding that and utilizing it and dedicating public space so that people and their families have a place to go and a place to be out in the open and yet in a civic space that's safe and fun. So the underground, there's a lot of people that are proponents of putting the train tracks underground, but it's one of those things that is intermodal and intergovernmental. So you have a lot of opposing and challenging viewpoints about whose budget is it? How's it going to be impacted? What's going to happen to the hockey stadium? What's going to happen to the entertainment district? What's going to happen? So there's a lot of competing concepts. When you talk large scale like that, it sometimes takes years to get sorted out, and sometimes it just takes some large movement that moves the needle. And if the Moodle, that's I think the reason that the Power District and the stadium 100-acre development, it's actually larger than 100 acres, I believe, because Larry H. Miller owns some peripheral acreage on the Redwood side of it that they purchased as well. So but they are going after it as a mixed use and a Jordan River improvement. So, and they have the wherewithal to pull it off, and they're moving. They've already started the process of breaking ground for the Rocky Mountain Power headquarters to be moved from where it is to a new building with a smaller footprint as part of the power station, saving the power station, chimneys, that sort of thing. There's a lot of good aspects and good things, but it takes a lot of coordination from everybody, and it needs to have some momentum and some kind of a wave that gets things done. And I point to Kyle's relationship to the and what did you call it? You were the public facing department in the
Civic engagement team.
civic engagement. That is a wonderful phrase. And I think it's one of the most critical things missing in most local government. And I was when we were fighting to get the train tracks put into embedded in the streets along North Temple, when they were planning the project, it had already been underway. They'd already had it budgeted. It was already a done deal that they were going to be ballasted train tracks. They were going to look like a train yard. They were going to look like the train yards that are over by West High. And and that was going to be the grand entrance to Salt Lake City, according to the mayor, but it was not going to be grand at all. And we rallied the entire front line of businesses, residents, and we went to the city council meetings and we said, don't spend any money on the sides of the street and on North Temple to beautify it. We don't want any no bushes, no benches, no artwork, because it's not going to matter, because it's going to look like a train yard. And we managed to turn the entire city council from totally dubious to unanimously saying they would embed the train tracks. They would embed the train in the street, so it looks like a streetcar. Every place else in Salt Lake City, you want to talk about equity on the west side, right? Equity on the west side was, we were going to get the ballasted freight train looking train tracks down the North Temple. Everywhere else in the city, from the university, Fourth South, all the train tracks that had been put in up to that point were all looking like streetcars. Ours was going to look like a freight train. So we were able to turn that tide. We were able to push them into a place where we got included in that process. And that's my point about having civic engagement. We need to develop our own private civic engagement and couple it with government civil engagement so that we can create a wave of influence and interest. And that's community building. That's what we need to do. That's the solution.
Okay, I think we have another question.
First, I'd like to preface with, what are the boundaries of the west side? I'm sorry, Linda Sage, Legal and Voters. I live in West Jordan. I'm pretty sure I'm not on the west side. West Valley City used to be, but what are the boundaries? And then I might have another question for you, Dan.
Okay. Well, do you want to go from the city's perspective? I know the West Side Coalition's did boundary, but
I'm an expert in maps. I studied it in school. So I think technically most of it's from 21st South North all the way up to 23rd North, and then from I-15 over to I-215. But I think Guadalupe is also considered the West Side, and that runs over to from North Temple up to 6 North, all the way over to 3rd West.
yeah, a lot of the issues we're talking about would certainly apply in West Valley or Magnet. Like they deal with this stuff too. But at least for our organization, we're a West Side Salt Lake City organization, so we'd end at the city boundary.
Oh, okay, so
Basically.
my question would be, one of your statements was a solution might be to get more families in there. So how much development property is there out there to put more homes in and more, not even just affordable housing, but even unaffordable
Well-
housing? But I mean, how far west
Yeah.
can you go there? Okay,
Yeah.
is it possible to get more families and homes in there?
Well, so single family homes, probably not. And there's not a lot more developable land for single family homes. There's about, like Bill said, about 100-acre development project that's mainly being run by the state board, the Larry H. Miller Company, in partnership with the city. that is all currently taken up by power plants, the state fair park, and kind of dormant state buildings like the agricultural building. So that is a big opportunity. I don't think that they will have single family homes there. I think they'll have condos and townhomes probably, but those are places that people could live. There's also, as you probably see throughout Salt Lake City, but we see maybe a lot, even more along North Temple and surrounding area, a lot of big apartment complexes going up. And I'm normally somebody, as you can probably guess from the conversation so far, who supports housing in most of its forms. I think bringing people is, I know that there are drawbacks, but that generally the good outweighs the bad. But I will say we've had a lot of one type of development along the North Temple corridor, and a lot of affordable housing in big apartment complexes, and they're mostly studios and one bedrooms. And you know, I kind of challenge my beliefs, honestly, because like I said, I usually believe more people, you're going to get better businesses and more people walking around, and things are going to thrive. It hasn't happened on North Temple. In fact, we've seen as the housing has increased, the businesses have left, more businesses have left over time. And it's a little counterintuitive. But our best guess at the moment is that it's because it's kind of been all one type of thing. And that's kind of a deeply affordable or deeply affordable housing. So we really have a need for, even though I'm really committed to having a place for people at all levels of income to live in our community, I think we at this point need more development in kind of the middle and higher income brackets for people to come into, because that's what is going to help, you know, give us purchasing power and political power in our neighborhoods. So without changing it too much, because so that's the struggle, right? Because you also don't want it to property values go up, neighborhoods gentrify, and you know we risk losing like a really diverse community with that all people have access to, and so we can't lose that. But we also, I think, do need more people in order to preserve our strength. And so yeah, it's a tricky balance. I think that there's plenty of opportunities, and again, you can go denser in neighborhoods like where I lived in the Bay Area. They really went more into the ADU arena than we have been willing to go. I think the Westside Coalition has supported expanding ADUs almost every time it's come up, but there's still a lot of limits in how those can be done. But that is a way you can create more density in neighborhoods without kind of fundamentally changing their character. You know, you're not building a 5-story, 400-unit building over the top of 6 houses. You're letting those 6 houses add 6 more units to their backyards. And yeah, that's going to maybe cause some parking challenges, but how big of a problem is that compared to the other things we've been talking about, right? So those are kinds of the discussions. But yeah, I don't think you're going to see big tracts of Ivory homes coming to the west side. You're going to have to find a way to fill in and build up. And I think there are opportunities there.
Yeah, you can put in density without doing the 5/1 style housing. It can be as simple as duplexes and fourplexes. I really like the way you think about this problem, Dan, and I totally agree with you. I think affordable housing is mostly gone in the US, and I'm speaking off not on behalf of the Salt Lake City Transportation Division in here, but I've been kind of disappointed with how the state has been implementing, doing affordable housing incentives. I don't think giving people money is the way to decrease the cost of housing. It's a supply demand issue right now. There's a lot of demand and not a lot of supply, and the only way we get out of that is building more. So I think density is the only way out to get back to affordable housing.
Well, I think we've exhausted the questions. Our panel isn't quite exhausted, so I'm going to just let each one of you make a closing statement of whatever you'd like us to take away, whether it's come to my event if you aren't already on the west side, or support this policy that might come up before city council. Who wants to go first?
Follow me on Instagram. No. But really, SLC Moves is the city's transportation, engineering, and streets division. And you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook to stay up to date with all of our projects. And that's SLC Moves.
I'm doing it right now.
Yes, SLC Moves, MOVES. I feel like I'm at a spelling bee speaking into the mic, spelling it out.
Mr. Mendieta.
Yes, so I guess follow me too on Instagram. I guess so. One of my commitments as a business owner in the project that I decided to bring to the Salt Lake area is I do free workshops. I teach people. I do cooking classes, and I do this for free. I'm doing one tomorrow at Hillable Market. I'm fully booked, but I'm trying to get more small businesses so we can work together, so I can share with people the importance of this ingredient. So just like the importance of food, because we talk about expansion, housing, all those great things, but what of the environment? What are the food that we're eating? Those are really important things too. And that's what I want to bring my knowledge and share with people, this knowledge and how they can grow ingredients at home, or how they can eat a little bit better, or different things that they can change the way of eating too, which is great.
Thank you.
We're at westsideslc.org. That's the Westside Coalition's website. So you can go there and join our mailing list. That'd be nice. If you know anybody on the West Side who cares about stuff like this and wants to get involved, like a lot of volunteer boards, we deal with turnover and burnout a lot. And so we're always looking for more people to kind of help join the mission. So anybody, you know, send them our way, westsideslc.org. And then I guess I just encourage everybody to think about these things. I mean, we excitingly, there's actually a bar that is planning to come to my neighborhood a few blocks away in a place like next to that smoke shop I mentioned earlier. And I was pretty excited about that. I think it's something that, you know, the neighborhood could use. But I'm already, a guy came by my house yesterday with a petition against the bar. So like, I feel like there's, again, it's always a push and pull, you know, on these things. And I think people get scared. And on the West Side, there's frankly, a lot of really justified fear of promises and change in government, all those things. But I hope people will kind of maybe be less skeptical about things like that. And so maybe spread the word about that as well. Thank you.
I would like more businesses to come to our neighborhood. If a small business owner wants to open something, I would love for them to open it over on the West Side. And just yesterday, I said to my husband, we went to the restaurant. I said, you know what? I really want some ice cream. We were in a meeting. And I'm thinking, where can I go get ice cream in my neighborhood? Rancho Market on North Temple and 900 West has a beautiful selection of ice cream. And it's right around the corner from my house. Come to our neighborhood, walk our neighborhood, and tell your friends if they're opening a business to open it on the West Side.
I would just like to say that because we live virtually behind one building off North Temple, the freeway is our front window view. We live directly across the freeway, but we walk across the parking lot to work, which is a nice commute. But we've seen, on a positive note, we've been on the West Side dying to have multi-task force, law enforcement, and drug interdiction teams really focus on the amount of drug traffic that's going on in the area. And now it's moved, you know, this was all over in downtown Salt Lake for so long. And then they brought in a whole task force with portable command units and brought in the highway patrol, brought in sheriffs, brought in everybody, and they cleaned it up, you know, and they all moved to the West Side. And we saw a big influx. At one point, 8th West, south of North Temple, the one block between North Temple and South Temple, with a big grassy divide in the middle, beautiful trees and really nice street. There were 125 street people in that one block, all there, camped out, fighting, hanging out, partying, doing drug deals. We've had, you know, so that's what it was at one point. And it's getting much better. And through a collection of effort on a lot of local community assets and and city assets, and I'm starting to document that now. And I have seen interdictions where 3 highway patrol officers are there in their vehicles. On one side of our house, it was 3 highway patrol officers, 2 city police officers, a fire truck, and a paramedic, and an ambulance, helping people that were overdosed. And that amount of effort is very expensive, and the city has to pay. It comes out of their budget. That's money spent by all of those to have 3 state troopers there in their vehicles And we've noticed recently that when I would drive from Red Iguana to Red Iguana 2, it's like it's two blocks one way, 2 blocks the other way. And in that 4-block drive, I would see I count 5 police cars, 6 highway patrol cars, and incident officers, that they have a white vehicle. There are now city incident officers. So the efforts are now being fruitful. And so I want to end on a positive note that this is all going to change. And along Dan's feelings about infill creates safety. Infill creates security. Infill creates political will that the government agencies respond to. If we have low income, low profile, sparse populations and businesses that are thinning out constantly, they're not going to invest in their budgets in our neighborhood. They are going to invest in budgets in neighborhoods that are growing, needing, and demanding. And we are now growing, needing, and demanding. We're going to have a power district that is going to be a crown jewel in our entire state and some in the southwestern United States. So we need to support that. We need to keep our influence and our ear to the ground and be part of the solution, because the changes are coming and they're good.
Thank you to everyone. Let's join. This has really been educational, and I'd like to thank you all, and I'll excuse you. And I've got just a couple short announcements as part of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Looking forward to talking to you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Kyle, nice meeting you.
Likewise. Kyle.
Mucho gusto. I'm sorry, go
Oh, sorry.
ahead. No.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Mucho gusto, Suerte.
Okay.
Igualmente. Ahí va a visitarnos al Red Iguana. Ahí estamos.
Everyone who found tonight's event useful, take a few minutes to like or share us on related posts on Facebook, Instagram, X, if you use that, your social media.
Oops, I'm leaving all my bags.
Up next, in the league, the Night Owls meeting is on the 4th Monday of the month, which is this coming Monday, November 25th at 7:30 p.m. on Zoom and live in the Community of Grace Presbyterian Church in Sandy. This month's meeting will involve, I think, Marilyn Bound's presentation on writing as civic engagement. The Nightingales meet the last Tuesday of the month, which is next Tuesday, November 26th, at Judy Short's home at 7:30 p.m. for a discussion related to tonight's general topic meeting, Westside Equity. And then Town Club will meet Friday, December 6th at 11 a.m. in person in the Town Club. This month, the meeting will be a holiday gathering and an opportunity to discuss tonight's topic in greater length. There's an optional lunch with payment and RSVPs in advance required. Please contact Kathy Beely. I think the Wasatch Scholars are meeting Monday, the 25th. That's what the calendar says, but I'm not totally sure. Last but not least, our December social is on December 4th from 6 to 8 p.m. in Holiday City Hall. Register now. If you get this email that says, save the date, scroll down where it tells you to register, because it's not enough to just save the date. You actually have to register in order to come. Plan to bring a potluck dish for 8 and your own festive plate. In January, we will not have a Salt Lake meeting because there will be a League of Women Voters Utah Zoom presentation regarding the legislative session. In February, we will be meeting the 3rd Wednesday of the month, and we're putting together that program. The plan is to have a program about state-local governmental relations, thinking that something it will be going on that basis in the legislature at the time, and we might have an opportunity to weigh in. I don't think we have any other action items or advocacy issues. If you want to get involved in advocacy at the state level, you can still join the Legislative Action Corps. And and the local level, the Observer Corps. So observe city council, school boards. If you're new to the league, please get involved in one of these many ways. Thank you very much.